This crisis in Gaza started almost 3 months ago, October 7, and we have managed until now not to resolve the crisis, but at least to avoid a spillover in the region, in the West Bank and Lebanon. And this is what we need to continue to do. On day one, President Macron, Prime Minister Colonna worked very hard, tirelessly, to convince regional stakeholders to avoid regional conflagration linked to the crisis in Gaza, and to a certain extent we managed to succeed and to get there. So you mentioned the events in Beirut earlier today. France will continue to encourage all sides to avoid escalations and to focus on the situation in Gaza and to make sure that we can have progress on the ground, sustainable cessation of hostilities, resumption of talks, humanitarian relief, release of all hostages, etc., etc.
Those assassinations that took place in Beirut, are they a breach of the UN Charter? Is this a breach of Lebanon's sovereignty and territorial integrity?
Well, I don't have to comment on that. I think it remains unclear. What we need to do again is to avoid spillover effect. We need to avoid conflict between Israel and Lebanon. We need to make sure that the situation in the southern part of Lebanon remains calm. We need to make sure that UNIFIL, which is the UN PKO, which is deployed there since 1978, can fulfill its mandate. And nobody needs a new front in this region.
Of course, you're talking about escalation. We've got escalation potentially in other places as well. Look at what's going on in the Red Sea. I believe you're now calling a Security Council meeting in the coming hours on that. How worried is France, particularly now as we know there's an Iranian warship that's now patrolling the area?
Well, we are very concerned with the situation in the Red Sea. France had joined the condemnation of these attacks on day one. As you rightly said, James, the Security Council will discuss this issue tomorrow afternoon at 3 p.m. in this chamber. And we need to do whatever it takes to secure maritime safety. It's essential. I think nobody wants to see also escalation in the Red Sea. And the Red Sea is absolutely vital for transportation of goods, people, energy, humanitarian goods, etc. So I think we need to secure maritime safety in the Red Sea and everywhere.
Let's get to Gaza itself, where there's this dire humanitarian situation where so many people have been killed, more than 20,000, half of those are children. France has control of the Security Council in terms of being the president for the next month. Are you going to push for another resolution? And do you see any change in the US position? Because the US, of course, are the ones blocking this with their veto.
Well, we need to see progress on this file, of course. The humanitarian situation remains absolutely dire. The Security Council adopted 2 resolutions on the humanitarian dimension of this crisis. And to be honest with you, implementation of this resolution is not there. The needs remains. And of course, it's good to see the Security Council addressing the humanitarian situation in Gaza, but we need to do more than addressing the symptoms of this crisis. And this is why France has been urging all Security Council members to support a sustainable cessation of hostilities in Gaza, because this is what we need for the people, for humanitarian access. What we need above all is a full protection of civilians.
Okay, well let me press you on that. There isn't protection of civilians right now. Is Israel acting illegally in France's view in what it's doing now? Because South Africa is taking it to the International Court of Justice in The Hague under the Genocide Convention. Do you agree with that action, for example?
What we recognize is the right of Israel to defend itself. Everybody should remember that on October 6th, the situation in Gaza was calm. And Hamas decided to attack Israel, to kill 1,200 Jews, to rape women in a monstrous manner.
But these are crimes. But has its response been legitimate self-defense, or are these war crimes?
Yeah, what is legitimate is to make sure that you're not a victim anymore from terrorist attack. It has been a terrorist attack, and Hamas has acted as a terrorist movement. And Israel has a right to defend itself, to make sure that its people are safe, that this kind of terrorist attack do not happen again. So my point is that everything which has to do with self-defense and avoiding a repetition of these attacks is, in our view, acceptable and legitimate. What should be avoided, what is not acceptable, is a violation of the Geneva Conventions and a violation of the law of the war, of international humanitarian law. So, going after the fighters from Hamas is okay. Of course, going after civilians, women, children, elders is not. It's clear. There should be a clear distinction.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.